Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be recapping the Montreal Major. It ended just yesterday, and what I want to do in particular, we'll take a look back at the matches, we'll look at how my predictions went and how your predictions may have went, and then we'll take a look at the tier list I made early on and adjust it. So we'll look at sort of what the expectations were beforehand, and then how things turned out. So, Black Dragons take down CL4L, G2 take down Cyclops, Falcons take down Alpha Team, and Chiefs take down Fear X. No surprises here. I think these were all the expected results. G2 took down Black Dragons 2-0. They had to make a few comebacks because they started on the attack of both of these maps, but they get it done. Falcons take down Chiefs extremely dominantly. I think we had two 14-4 scorelines and two 14-2 scorelines over the course of the event, and we got the first one pretty early on. Robbie, spectacular tournament, petered out a little bit towards the end, but I think his name will still live in a lot of people's minds after this event. That's Falcons going through in addition to G2. And then in the lower bracket, CL4L eliminated by Cyclops. I have to wonder how the run would have gone for CL4L had they not had to make that substitution. Like, would they have made phase 2? I think probably they at least would have won a game. Like, they ran it really close against Cyclops. They probably would have won against Labs, and then on Chalet, who knows what would have happened, because that was the map that they took down Black Dragons on really decisively. So I feel like it was advantage for them. Yeah, CL4L, the first team eliminated. Alpha Team up against Fear X. The expected result, but the first map ended up really close. Chiefs beat Cyclops and a 3-mapper, but still Chiefs get the job done. They advance, and Black Dragons eliminate Fear X. So the 3 teams I was never going to predict were Cyclops, Fear X, and Alpha Team, and yeah, none of them make it through. I went with CL4L rather than Falcons, and originally I had them over Chiefs, but I think sort of what I predicted there happened, where it was G2 plus Black Dragons, and then 2 of Falcons, Chiefs, CL4L. Okay, in phase number 2, let's actually go to this other tab here. Falcons take down Dark Zero. We start with a bunch of upsets. Chief take down Scars. I think this is sort of whatever. I think Scars were a little bit the favorite, but this could have gone either way. BDS fall to W7M, and Virtus Pro take down Sonic. So these were all the lower seeds taking out the higher seeds, and unexpected, but they were all fairly close. I guess Dark Zero, Falcons only 7-4, but still. In this one, max regulation, these two both had overtime, so at least they were close. They are best of ones. Who knows who would have won if these were best of 3s. Secret takedown Elevate, but it takes all 15 rounds. Liquid takes down G2 in overtime. FaZe beat Space Station, also in overtime, and Black Dragons beat D+. So actually all pretty close games, no 7-3s or less. And only about half of them were the expected results. In the second round, Falcons take down Secret, so they continue their good run. They get an even more solid win here. Liquid take down Chiefs, expected. FaZe beat Virtus Pro, that's expected. And W7M beat Black Dragon, also expected. So maybe you thought that Falcons would win this based on their scoreline over Dark Zero compared to Secret scoreline over Elevate. Maybe you saw this one coming. And then in the lower bracket, BDS beat D+ 7-4, nothing to write home about. D+ were arguably the worst team of this phase. Scars take down G2, I think a little bit unexpected at the time. Dark Zero lose to Elevate 7-5, so Elevate really close against Secret, and then they get a close win against Dark Zero. And then Space Station get the comeback winning at Sonic. Sonics were up 6-3. Space Station win 5 in a row to secure that one, avoiding the 0-2 bracket. FaZe take down Falcons. So finally, Falcons are humbled. They lose 2-0 pretty decisively. They had 2 solid wins here in best of 1s. They had 2 solid wins in phase number 1 in best of 3s. W7M beat Liquid, and I think a lot of people thought Liquid would win. A lot of people thought W7M would win, but I think at the point that W7M won here, like obviously the writing was sort of on the wall. They went 3-0. Obviously they were one of the best teams at the event, and it really translated into their top 8 performance as well. In the mid bracket here, Secret take down Scars, but they have to go all 15 rounds like they did against Elevate. BDS beat Black Dragons in 12 rounds. Chiefs beat Elevate pretty decisively. Virtus Pro take down Space Station, a really fat choke from Space Station. They were up 5-1, and Cafe, I think it ended up being the most defender-sided map of the event, but still not getting a single attack on any map is pretty abysmal. And then G2 fall to Sonics, being eliminated 7-0, 7-2, so one of those extremely dominant scorelines I was talking about earlier. And Dark Zero beat D+ 7-3, 7-4, knocking them out. So yeah, G2 and D+, obviously the 0-3 teams, and for that reason, and maybe other reasons, pretty clearly the worst teams of this phase. Then in the 4th round, so we continue to promote teams to top 8 and eliminate teams. Falcons beat Chiefs, not nearly as decisively as they did in phase number 1, but still they get the job done in 2 maps. BDS beat Virtus Pro, and they had to make the comeback both times. One map they were down 4-6, the other one they were down 5-6, and in both cases they pushed overtime and won in the 15th round. And Secret beat Liquid here. Felt like Liquid was probably going to qualify, especially after winning Clubhouse. They almost let it slip because they were up 6-2, lost 4 rounds in a row, but then they get it in overtime, and then they got absolutely slapped on Border and Bank. Black Dragons eliminate Scars. I could have seen this going either way, but I did feel like Black Dragons was probably the favorite coming into it. Sonics beat Elevate, expected result. Close one on Nighthaven Labs, not close on Chalet. And Space Station beat Dark Zero, 12 rounds in all 3 maps, and that's Dark Zero going home. They were probably one of the most highly rated teams coming into this event. People thought that they would make a solid run, at least top 8, but more like top 4, I think a lot of people's expectations were, and not to be. They fall at 1-3 in the Swiss phase, and then in the very final round, Virtus Pro up against Chiefs, 7-2, 7-0, so another extremely dominant scoreline. That happened to Chiefs twice. They lost 14-4 in phase number 1, and they lost 14-2 in the final round of phase number 2 to be sent home. Black Dragons fall to Space Station, close-ish maps, but still clean 2-0 for Space Station, and Sonics beat Liquid 2-0. I think these were all the expected results. Maybe you could have seen Liquid Sonics flipping, but no, I think these were all, at this point, the expected results. And finally, we have the top 8 phase against Sonics 2-0, extremely decisive. Another one of those 14-4s. KDS double MVP. He had a really solid event. And Sonics, I think, were definitely the underdogs in this one, but I do think a lot of people thought this would at least be close, not a complete massacre like we ended up seeing. BDS versus Secret, this was the closest one of the quarterfinals. BDS getting the job done. They pretty well own Secret at this point. I guess Secret have a few map wins on them in the last little while, but BDS has won all of the best of 3s. W7M up against Space Station, 7-5, 7-4, so weren't these the exact same scorelines that SSG just sent Black Dragon home by? Anyways, that's Space Station going home. That's both NA teams going home in the quarterfinals at an NA event. Unfortunate. It's sad. It definitely made me not nearly as excited to watch the rest of the matches, the fact that there were no NA teams remaining. And finally, Virtus Pro up against Falcons, although I think this was actually the first one chronologically. Virtus Pro take it down, double overtime, sort of almost a mirror image to what happened between Virtus Pro and BDS in phase number 2, where in this one, Virtus Pro was down on both maps. They had to push overtime, and then they won in overtime both times. It was 4-6 into overtime into 8-7 and 8-6, whereas for BDS, it was 5-6 and 4-6 into both round 15s. Slightly different, but pretty much the same story. And then in the top 4, BDS crushed FaZe on Nighthaven Labs. I heard some people saying that FaZe just played poorly, and I do think that was a part of it. But on the other hand, I think BDS really came prepared for Nighthaven Labs. And then Skyscraper goes all 15 rounds, but BDS gets the job done. No cafe required. W7M against Virtus Pro. Decisive win for W7M on Labs, and then we go to Cafe, and it's a fairly decisive win for VP, but then to Chalet, and another good win for W7M, sending them to the grand final and setting up the Esports World Cup Grand Final rematch, also a Swiss Round 1 rematch. In Esports World Cup, BDS decimated W7M. They played a best of 1 and a best of 5. BDS won 4 maps. W7M, over the course of those 4 maps, only won 8 rounds. It was 28-8. BDS were plus 20 on round differential, but the script flips here because BDS do win the first map, but then 3 maps in a row for W7M. So they got 3 maps here. They got 1 in the Swiss phase, so they're 4-1 on BDS at that event. BDS were 4-0 on them at Esports World Cup, so I guess over the course of the last 2 events, BDS is still up 1 map, but I don't think W7M minds too much. I think they're perfectly happy to walk away with their major victory, and that is actually BDS losing in the grand final of both official majors this year, but they did win the Saudi tournament that they win every year. Okay, now let's walk through how predictions went. You might have already seen this if you were tracking throughout the event. I had G2 in the upper bracket, Black Dragons on the lower bracket. These were correct. I had Chiefs in the wrong bracket. They advanced here, and I had CL4L when in reality it was Falcons advancing here. My original prediction had Falcons here, CL4L here. Could have got 6 out of 8 points in phase 1 rather than 5, but oh well. I think I predicted reasonably well. Not too hard to just predict against Alpha Team, Cyclops, and FearX and collect your points, but certainly could have gotten at least a few more. In phase number 2, I think I predicted reasonably well. Certainly some people got more points than I did, but I don't think that was an easy thing. I think that required a lot of luck. If I was going to start replacing teams here, I don't know which ones I would have started with. The actual teams I got wrong here were Dark Zero and Liquid. The other 6 were correct, and 3 of their positions were correct in phase, Secret, and Space Station. So If I was going to add in teams, probably the first two would have been G2 and VP, and then the third one would have been Falcons. So even if I added those three in, even if I replaced Dark Zero, Liquid, and one other team, I still would have been missing one team. G2 did not advance like some people thought that they would. I'm glad I didn't end up putting them, but I was sort of close. I just didn't feel like any of these teams were replaceable. Liquid was looking like one of the best teams coming into the event. I think most people expected they would make at least top 8, if not like top 4. And similar story for Dark Zero. I think that was the expectation. Top 8 minimum, maybe top 4, maybe even a grand final appearance, but not to be. They weren't great. Then in final phase number 3, for some reason, yeah, it didn't save my predictions. I guess maybe I didn't hit the save button, but I've heard other people say that they definitely hit the save button and it still didn't record theirs. I'm not too disappointed with this. It wouldn't have bumped me up a tier or anything, but it's a little bit curious that this happened to me and other people. Anyways, in quarterfinals, I recommended you go with FaZe, BDS, W7M, and Virtus Pro. If you did that, you got the full 4 points. I voted for the NA teams because, I mean, I really wanted the NA teams to win, but they did not. In the semis, I clicked the button on BDS, Virtus Pro. That net me 1 point, had it actually given me the points. It was BDS and W7M advancing, setting up that Esports World Cup Grand Final rematch, as we mentioned earlier, and BDS not getting the win here as was expected. I would say they were pretty heavily the favorite, being in the Manchester Major Grand Final, crushing W7M at Esports World Cup. So for a variety of reasons, I think people definitely thought BDS would win, and no, it's W7M that walk away with it pretty impressively. All right, let's take a look finally at the tier list. So yeah, this is how I had things set up. I think this is largely reflective of most people's opinions. Maybe some people thought some teams were slightly under or overrated. I think some people thought G2 would do a lot better. Same thing with Virtus Pro, and those were maybe the two big ones, because although Dark Zero did a lot worse, I don't think that many people expected that to happen. So how would I adjust things? Obviously, W7M was the best team in the event. They didn't lose a single series. They dropped the one map versus BDS, one map versus Virtus Pro, no maps versus Space Station, and they only lost 2 maps in the entire tournament. So pretty good stuff from them. That's one of the more dominant runs in an event. W7M, are they just the greatest org of all time? It's obviously between them and G2. G2 does have 2 different teams lifting the hammer, so that's the big factor, I think. How much do you value the very dense grand finals appearances and wins over the last few years versus just straight up having 2 completely different teams lift the hammer for the World Championship? I guess Fabian returned as the coach for the second one, but still entirely different playing roster. Anyways, let me know your opinions on that one. BDS, yeah, obviously got to be here at number 2. It's pretty easy to just rank teams like these are going to be the top 4 teams. These are going to be like 5 through 8. These will be teams that made it to the last round of Swiss. This is like the other teams eliminated Swiss, and these are the teams that went out in phase 1. But are there any other adjustments to make beyond that? Sonics, I think they come down to A tier. They were really impressive in their best of 3s in phase number 2. They lost both of their best of 1s, but those were both against fairly solid teams. And then they lost to FaZe, which isn't great because FaZe ended up getting smoked in their very next match. So had maybe they lost to like W7M, maybe you could put them back in S tier, but I think they belong in A tier. Dark Zero, I think C tier is where they belong. Some people might even put D tier, and I think that would be largely going off of how disappointing they were, not just their objective performance. Because if we go look at who they actually played, it's not too terrible. They lost to Falcons, who ended up making top 8. They lost to Elevate, maybe not amazing. Elevate weren't pushovers, but they weren't great either. They lost all their other games. They beat D+ at least cleanly. That's something. D+, probably the weakest team of phase number 2. And they lost to Space Station in a really close one. So they lost to 2 teams that made top 8, but only top 8. They didn't advance beyond that. Had they got to play against like Scars, Chiefs, maybe Black Dragons, I think they could have beat those teams, at least 2 of them, if not all 3. So maybe if they were mega bracket blessed, they could have got top 8. But I don't think they probably would have beaten most of the other teams had they played against them. So I think C tier's fair. I definitely don't think they should go down into D tier along with teams that got eliminated in phase number 1. What else do we need to do? Liquid definitely needs to come down to probably B tier. They definitely don't belong in A, getting eliminated in the fashion that they did. G2's got to come down here. Falcons, I don't know. Like, do you think Falcons would have beat any other team if they played them in the top 8? They were probably the weakest team in top 8. Like, they probably wouldn't have beat any of the other teams that advanced, but would they have beat Sonics or Space Station or Secret? I don't know if they would have. So I think they can probably go into the bottom of A tier. I'm missing Virtus Pro. Yeah, they did really well. Black Dragons, do they belong in B? I think, yeah, I guess. They made it out of phase 1. They made it to the final round of phase number 2. They can probably stay in B because the other tiers are getting a little bit crowded. Do we need to move anyone up out of here? Alpha team's got to stay down here. Let's go compare these guys' performances really quickly. Who did better? So they both made it to map number 3, I guess. They were both 1 map away. Fear-X get the 2-0 here. They get the 2-0 here, but these are really close. Cyclops lost to G2, whereas these guys, I don't know. I think it's really up for debate. I guess I'll put Cyclops above Fear-X. They're almost exactly the same. I guess I'll do like this, and then I'll move these guys up to at least here. I think D+ belongs down here. Would they have even made it out of phase number 1? I don't know that they would have. Probably depends who they played against. CL, 4L, they gotta come down, unfortunately. And probably to here. Yeah, that's tough, but that's probably where they belong. Should anyone else move up to B tier? Let's go check on Elevate and Scars. Elevate losing really closely to Secret. They lost to Sonics. They beat Dark Zero. Lost to Chiefs 7-3. This is sort of a bad look. And Scars, they also lost to Chiefs, but at least it was closer. They beat G2. Close against Secret. I think it's sort of up for debate which one you think is better. Well, maybe I'll have Scars above Elevate. I don't know if either of them jump up. Chiefs have to be above them, surely. I think maybe like this. Chiefs were really polarized. Like they were owning the APAC teams, but they got smoked multiple times. I think this is probably about as good as it's going to get. Maybe you switch Secret and Sonics. Probably put Secret higher. They had a better phase 1, and then they at least didn't get crushed in their quarterfinal game. Yeah, this probably looks about right. These are just straight up the top 4. These are just the quarterfinalists. These are teams that ended up in the final round of Swiss, and then these guys. Yeah, I think this is about how things ended up. So if you have any other comments you want to make about the major, anything you think I really forgot to talk about, feel free to leave it below. Let me know how your predictions went or how you enjoyed the major, and I will catch you guys next time.